I remember the night I sat in my car in a parking lot outside a grocery store, just not ready to go home. Nothing big had happened that day. No explosion, no breakdown, just a quiet ache in my chest that whispered, "This life doesn't fit you anymore." And that whisper, it scared me more than any loud, dramatic change ever could. Because when life is loud, you react. But when life is quietly unsettled, when you begin to feel the edges of who you've been stretching thin, that's when you know a big change is coming. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in the way you expect, but your soul has already started the conversation. Today, I want to walk with you through 5 signs, real, raw, deeply human signs, that a transformation is knocking. Not the pretty kind, the real kind. The kind that strips you and then remakes you. Let's breathe into this together. If this speaks to your heart, stay with us. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, not for the numbers, but because stories like these remind us we're never alone in the becoming. You're sitting at the dinner table with old friends, the same group you've known for years, the same inside jokes, the same rhythms, the same conversations looping back like a well-worn playlist. They're laughing, you're smiling, everything should feel right. But there's this quiet, almost imperceptible distance between you and the moment you're in. It's like watching your own life from behind glass. You're physically present, but emotionally, something has shifted. You start to notice how often you zone out in places that used to light you up, how heavy your chest feels in rooms that once felt safe, how the connection you used to feel to certain people, habits, and even dreams isn't there in the same way anymore. And it's not anyone's fault. That's the hard part. It's not about blame. It's about change. Something within you has moved, and now the world around you feels a little out of sync. It's like wearing a sweater you used to love, one that made you feel like you, and suddenly it doesn't fit right. The sleeves are too short. The material is itchy. It clings in all the wrong places. You look in the mirror and think, when did this stop feeling like mine? That discomfort isn't a mistake. It's a message. It's a quiet inner knowing that the version of you who belonged to this life is evolving. And just like a snake must shed its skin to grow, you are being asked to loosen your grip on the familiar to make room for something deeper, something truer. I remember sitting in a meeting once, surrounded by people I used to admire. We were brainstorming ideas, pitching dreams. And I looked around and thought, I don't belong here anymore. I'm pretending. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that my soul had started craving a different kind of alignment, and no amount of pretending could pull me back into a space I'd silently outgrown. This is how transformation begins, not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with quiet estrangement from the life you've known. And in those moments, the temptation is to gaslight yourself, to tell yourself you're being ungrateful, dramatic, disconnected. But what if you're not any of those things? What if you're simply being called to a life that's finally aligned with your truth? When life starts to feel unfamiliar in places that used to feel like home, it doesn't mean you're lost. It might just mean you're on your way to becoming. There comes a moment, often quiet, sometimes sudden, when your usual ways of numbing just stop working. The shows that used to distract you feel dull. The social media scroll doesn't pull you in the same way. The constant go, go, go of staying busy feels more like a cage than a comfort. You start to notice this hollowness in the things you used to reach for to avoid what you were really feeling. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means something inside you has shifted. Your soul is no longer content to be sedated. It wants to be seen. This is one of the clearest signs that a big change is on its way, when you can no longer unfeel what's bubbling beneath the surface, when the ache you've been avoiding demands to be heard. For so long, we've been taught to manage discomfort instead of listening to it. We're trained to push through, to power past, to get over it as quickly and quietly as possible. But real transformation doesn't come from numbing. It comes from noticing, I remember a season in my life where I stayed so busy, so constantly distracted, I didn't even notice I hadn't taken a deep breath in weeks. I filled every spare moment with noise, music, podcasts, meetings, texts, because silence scared me, stillness scared me, feeling scared me. But then one night, I sat alone in my living room, no distractions, just me and the truth I'd been avoiding. And it hit me. My body wasn't tired, it was starved. Starved for presence, starved for honesty, starved for care. I wasn't burnt out from doing too much. I was burnt out from doing too little of what mattered. So I cried. I didn't know why exactly. I just let the tears come. And in that moment, I didn't need answers. I just needed release. Here's the thing. When your usual numbing tools stop working, it's not a failure. It's an invitation. It means your body and heart are finally ready to process what's been buried. You've grown out of avoidance and into awareness. And awareness, while it can feel painful at first, is the birthplace of clarity. It's the spark that lights up your next path, even if only one step at a time. You don't have to know what to do with the ache. You just have to stop pretending it's not there. That ache is your inner life stirring. That ache is your wisdom speaking. That ache is your soul knocking gently on the door, saying, "Hey, I'm still here. Let's talk." It takes incredible courage to sit with what hurts, to not run from it, to not fix it immediately. But that courage, quiet, grounded, and deeply human, is what opens the door to real, lasting change. So, if you've been feeling numb and suddenly you aren't anymore, that's not regression, that's progress. That's you waking up to yourself. And it's the most sacred beginning. It seems odd to say vulnerability, you aren't anymore. That's not regression. That's progress. That's you. That total truth. You aren't anymore. That's not regression. That's such there comes a shift, sometimes subtle, sometimes seismic, when you find yourself saying no more often, and not the kind of no that comes with a long apology or a nervous laugh, not the kind where you over-explain and tiptoe your way out of something because you're afraid of disappointing someone. No, this is a different kind of no. It's the one that rises from your gut. It's calm, it's steady. It doesn't come with guilt, it comes with clarity. This is one of the most powerful and honestly one of the most underrated signs that big change is blooming inside you. When you no longer need to justify your boundaries. When you no longer feel the need to explain your piece. When your own well-being becomes a good enough reason. There's something sacred about the moment you stop bending yourself into shapes just to be liked, accepted, or approved of. For a long time, people-pleasing may have been your survival strategy. It was mine. I used to measure my worth by how well I could accommodate everyone else's needs. I said yes so often I forgot what my real wants even sounded like. I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor because I thought being needed was the same thing as being loved. But then one day, I said no to something small. A meeting I didn't want to attend, a lunch that didn't feel right. And for the first time, I didn't explain myself. I just said it, kindly, firmly, and walked away. And something shifted. It was like I had given myself permission to exist as I truly was, not as a projection of other people's expectations. That small no became a seed, and slowly those seeds grew into a garden of self-trust. One boundary at a time, I began rebuilding my life in a way that didn't drain me, but nourished me. Saying no isn't about rejection. It's about alignment. It's about choosing what's true for you, even when it's uncomfortable, even when others don't understand, even when the old you would have said yes without blinking. Here's the beautiful, bold truth. Your healing will inconvenience people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. And that's okay. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some will call it distance, some will call it selfishness, but only you can name it for what it truly is: integrity. You start realizing that peace is more valuable than pleasing. That rest is not a reward, it's a right. That your energy is sacred, and it's not your job to manage other people's discomfort with your limits. You don't need to be aggressive, you don't need to be cold, you just need to be clear. And the moment you start saying no, with clarity instead of conflict, with love instead of fear, with calm instead of chaos, that's the moment you begin to reclaim the pen that writes the story of your life. If you started to notice your no getting stronger, clearer, and less apologetic, take heart. You are not becoming harsh, you are becoming whole. And from that place of wholeness, everything else begins to change. There is a moment, often quiet, sometimes sudden, when you just can't unsee the truth anymore. It might arrive softly, like a slow unraveling, or it might hit like a wave you never saw coming. But once it lands, it changes everything. You know the feeling. That conversation where someone smiles but your gut clenches. That morning you wake up and realize you're dreading a routine that used to feel comforting. That sentence you hear yourself say out loud, "I'm fine," and something deep inside whispers, "No, you're not." This moment doesn't always come with drama. There may be no shouting, no doors slammed, just a heavy, unmistakable knowing that the life you've built, pieces of it at least, isn't aligned with who you're becoming. And here's the kicker. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you recognize that your laughter in certain rooms feels forced, that your dreams have been on pause for years, that your calendar is full but your heart is empty, you can't go back to pretending it's okay. This is the part of change no one warns you about, the emotional whiplash of clarity. Because clarity, for all its gifts, often comes with grief. You begin to grieve what was never true, what you pretended to enjoy, what you told yourself was enough. You grieve the story you clung to because it felt safe. You grieve the version of yourself who settled because she didn't yet believe she deserved more. For me, that moment came late one night, staring at a blank page in a journal. I had been writing affirmations, dreams, plans, but none of it felt real. My pen hovered over the page, and all I could think was, I've been building a life that looks good on paper, but it's not mine. That truth cracked me wide open. It didn't mean I had to burn everything down, but it did mean I could no longer ignore the quiet betrayals I had normalized. The way I said yes when I meant no, the way I stayed silent to keep the peace, the way I shrunk myself so others could feel tall. Seeing the truth is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of something braver. It's the moment you stop settling for fine and start fighting for full. It's when you start asking, what would my life look like if it were honest? But I want to be gentle with you here. Truth is not always convenient. Sometimes it asks you to walk away from things you still love. Sometimes it shows you the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be, and that gap can feel unbearable. But that gap, that's where the real you lives. And bridging it takes time, compassion, and courage. You don't have to make every change overnight. But once you've seen the truth, really seen it, your soul will keep nudging you toward alignment. It won't let you settle. It won't let you go back to sleep. So if you're in that space, raw, wide-eyed, and aching with realization, don't rush it. Don't force a fix. Just stay with the truth. Let it settle into your bones. Let it rewrite the story, line by line. You are not falling apart. You are falling into place. And yes, it's scary, but it's also the most honest place to begin again. Something strange happens right before a big change takes root. You start to grieve things that technically haven't even ended yet. You're still in the relationship, still clocking into the job, still living in the same city, seeing the same faces, going through the same motions. Nothing on the surface looks different, but something inside you is already letting go. And that grief, it catches you off guard, because no one warns you that one of the loudest signs that your life is about to shift is sorrow. You start feeling a heaviness in places that once held joy, a quiet ache for a version of you who still believed this was forever. You might find yourself crying unexpectedly, not because something bad happened, but because you can feel something slipping away. And it's confusing, isn't it? To grieve something you still technically have, to mourn a goodbye you haven't even spoken yet. But here's what I want you to know with every fiber of your being, that grief is not weakness, it is preparation. Your soul is making space. Your heart is stretching open. You are beginning the sacred work of release. I remember waking up one morning in a life I had worked so hard to build, a life that made sense on paper, that other people admired, and feeling this quiet sadness settle over me. I couldn't explain it at first. Nothing was wrong, but everything felt done. Like I had already said goodbye emotionally, even though I hadn't made a single outward change. I tried to ignore it. I tried to reason with it. I told myself I was being dramatic. But that sadness didn't leave. It deepened. It began touching everything. And eventually, I realized this wasn't depression. This was truth. I was outgrowing a life I hadn't yet outlived. So I started honoring the grief. I stopped pushing it down. I let myself mourn. Not just the parts that had hurt me, but also the parts that had once held me. The friendships that had been my lifeline, the dreams that had carried me this far, the habits and identities that had once made me feel safe. I grieved everything, because everything was part of who I had been. And through that grief, I began to feel lighter. Not immediately, not cleanly, but steadily. Letting go doesn't always feel like freedom at first. It often feels like loss, because in many ways it is. You're not just releasing what wasn't good for you, you're releasing what was good until it wasn't anymore. You're releasing versions of yourself that you loved, people who mattered, chapters that meant something. That takes courage, and it deserves reverence. You are standing at the threshold between the known and the unknown, and before you can step through, you have to say a quiet, honest goodbye. So if you find yourself crying at random, feeling strangely tender about things you thought you'd already processed, don't rush through it. Don't try to be strong in the way the world defines it. True strength is soft. True strength is allowing yourself to feel it all. True strength is grieving what was, even as you walk toward what will be. And here's what's so beautiful about this kind of grief. It's not just about loss, it's also about love. Because you only grieve what mattered. You only mourn what touched you. Your tears are evidence that you lived that life fully, that it shaped you, stretched you, made you who you are, and now you're ready to become something more. So let the grief come. Let it pass through like a wave. Let it soak your edges and soften your resistance. You don't need to control it. You just need to witness it. Because that grief, it's the very proof that you're about to cross into something new. You're not falling behind. You're not being broken. You are being prepared. And what's waiting on the other side is a life built on truth, clarity, and self-respect. One brave goodbye at a time. If you're noticing these signs, you're not lost. You're waking up. You are not failing. You are shedding. And you don't have to have a 10-step plan. You don't need a rebrand. You don't need anyone's permission to start again. You just need to stay close to your truth. Closer than you've ever been. Let your life whisper. Let your body feel. Let your soul grieve. Let your heart be loud. Big change is not always loud or cinematic. Sometimes it begins in the quiet courage of choosing yourself. Over and over,